Welcome back to Talking Dragon Age, the show where I talk about Dragon Age. Today, we're talking about Blight magic. Unlike normal magic, it does not draw from the Fade. It's described as being akin to blood magic, which I would think just means that those who practice it draw the power from within themselves. The Blight itself is an enigmatic subject, and Blight magic even more so. We see it used only a few times throughout the games and novels. Most prominently, it's featured in the Calling. We see the Architect use it a few times in several different ways. One of the more prominent spells cast is a cloud of black fog. It's said to feel like 1,000,000 ants crawling all over your skin and each one biting and tearing away a piece of flesh. In the last flight, the Archdemon's breath is described as bearing no connection to the Fade. In addition to that, First Enchanter Ramil had made a deal with the Architect to learn how to use Blight magic himself. Upon his death, it was revealed that he had the Taint within him too. It's reasonable to say that he purposely infected himself with it in order to use it. Otherwise, he may have contracted it by using Blight magic, but I don't see how he would have been able to use it if he wasn't infected. No, I think he deliberately infected himself and the Architect just taught him how to utilize it. Now, I have two ideas for how Blight magic works. One is that it's similar to blood magic, but instead of blood, it's the Blight. The other idea is that it may be more akin to normal magic being from the Fade, but instead of the Fade, it's from the Void. The Void is a place of non-existence, which lines up well considering that Blight magic is almost always described as being empty. So as opposed to normal magic creating, Blight magic is destroying. So Blight magic is not really like normal magic at all. Some would say it's the reverse. It's also worth noting that in the Calling, Blight magic was used to enchant a few distinct items. One was a black dagger that Duncan stole early on from the first enchanter, and the others were black brooches that were meant to make them virtually undetectable to Darkspawn. However, unbeknownst to the party, they also sped the rate of corruption within their bodies. Duncan was the only one unaffected by this, and it turns out that the dagger he stole was resistant to the Blight. In the final battle, Blight magic spells are cast, and the dagger is essentially repelling them away from it. It's then explicitly stated that it came from the same magic taught by the Architect. It's also worth noting that we don't really see it repelling normal magic, just Blight magic. Moving on, I want to talk about Avernus. We meet him in the Warden's Keep DLC for DA Origins. While what we're told is mostly vague, Avernus was conducting extensive research on the Taint and even succeeded in slowing its progression through his body. It's claimed he did this with blood magic, while he also dabbled in Blight magic because he realized there was tremendous power in it. He began specifically looking to see if there was a way to refine the joining ritual to just take the power of the Taint without the evil that would ultimately kill whoever drank it. He wasn't successful in that last part, but he did create an elixir that tapped into the Taint and ultimately granted powerful abilities to the Warden that drank it. But what's more important than that is his use of blood magic to slow the rate of corruption. He's still hearing the Calling, but he retains his mind. This reminds me how Merrill used blood magic to purify the piece of the Alluvian she kept. She says it was just a piece, and we literally go back and see the rest of the shattered fragments of that Alluvian in Witch Hunt. Nevertheless, the mirror was tainted, and Merrill was able to drive out the taint by using blood magic. She says she could have done this with a bunch of lyrium if she had it, but she didn't. Thus, she turned to blood magic to get the adequate amount of power. The only other time we see the Blight being removed from something is in the last flight, when Warden Asaya draws the Blight out of a clutch of griffin eggs and into herself. Apparently, because they hadn't fully developed, the Blight didn't have a sufficient hold on them. If they had hatched, for example, she wouldn't have been able to do that. But it should also be noted that she too did this with blood magic. But of course, there's also Fiona. She was effectively cured of the Taint after giving birth to Alistair. It's speculated that the blood of a great dragon that Merrick carried is what caused that to happen. Now, we know that the Warden Commander went looking for a cure, and is conditionally said to have returned at the end of Trespasser, if he or she romanced Leliana, who became divine. Hopefully we'll see an update on the state of his or her quest in the next game, or at least in a book or something. But speaking of Leliana, in future Redcliffe we can find studies on the Blight. It would appear that Alexius had people studying the Taint himself. Deliberately infecting people, studies show that there's no discernible pattern to how quickly the Blight spreads throughout the subject. Sometimes it goes very quickly, other times very slowly. They began introducing blood and flesh from resistant subjects into others to see if that could somehow prevent the spread of the Blight. It didn't work, but what stands out is that Leliana has the most resistance to the Blight out of any of their subjects. Now, we see this regardless of whether or not she was romanced by the Warden, and whether or not she was killed during the Urn of Sacred Ashes. This would mean that her resistance to the Blight is totally independent from her having tainted sexy time or being reborn by lyrium or whatever the hell happened if you were heartless enough to kill her. I don't really have an explanation for why this is, but I wanted to bring it up regardless. The fact that Liliana has such a high resistance to the Blight is interesting. But I now want to move on and talk about some banter with Solas and Vivian I found interesting.
Corypheus is a complex creature to draw upon so many different sources of power. He has his own magic. He draws from the Blight. The artifact he carries is elven. And now he uses a demon to create a false calling to fool the mages.
The false calling was Blight magic. The demon merely amplified its power.
This ancient magister is like a man drinking from 3 wine glasses at once.
And one of the glasses is poisoned.
You disapprove of Corypheus using the magic of the Blight, Solas?
Every intelligent creature should.
Yet you raise no objection to the Grey Wardens using blood magic.
Blood magic is no worse than any other, properly used. But the Blight corrupts everything it touches. Those who believe themselves capable of using it safely are mad.
Solas insists there is no way to safely nor responsibly utilize Blight magic. As I've said a few times on this show, the Blight was almost certainly present in Elvenon. Anduril was probably the first to utilize it, until Mythal stepped in. Seeing the power that Anduril had, it seems likely that some of the other Evanurs would have tried to harness it for themselves, believing that they could handle it better than she did. That's always the way with this kind of thing. They would have thought that they were strong, wise, or careful enough to use it safely. Solas would have seen all of this. Seeing what it did to Anduril would have planted suspicion, seeing it again and again would have confirmed his fears. I'm saying this because I don't think seeing it just one time would be enough for him to surely say this. He is extraordinarily apt and astute, but even he would need to see something like this more than once in order to form such a conclusion.
Solas, what do you think this Corypheus actually is?
A darkspawn, as he appears.
But what of the orb he wields and the dragon he commands? This is no ordinary darkspawn.
His true advantage is the red lyrium. It is corrupted by the Blight as he is. Thus he taps into its power twofold. Whatever he was before, that is what makes him dangerous now.
So is it possible to use Blight magic for good? I think, ultimately, no. While it may be used with good intentions, in the end, the Blight will always corrupt and destroy. However, there are ways to defend against it. I mentioned earlier that the dagger that Duncan stole was enchanted by Blight magic, but was also able to repel Blight magic and negate the effects of the amulet he wore. I do find it rather odd that a Blight-enchanted dagger was able to repel the Blight. But in addition to that, when you enter the Bastion of the Pure in the Descent, Valda notes that there are no signs of Darkspawn, saying there must be a reason they avoid it. I deduced in another episode that when we went down that elevator is when we entered the Titan. Working off that, my first impulse is that the Darkspawn avoid it out of fear. If that's the case, it would need to be instinctual, not developed, given that most, if not all, of the Titans have been comatose. But what would trigger this reaction? How do they know to avoid it? My first guess is it would be the lyrium. In such a heavy concentration, its hum or song is what keeps the Darkspawn at a distance. This would mean that even sleeping Titans repel the Blight away from them. But I do have another idea. As I said, blood magic was used to reject the taint in certain objects. Merrill claims this could have been done with a substantial amount of lyrium as well. What if the Titans or their blood is constantly pushing the taint away from their bodies? I don't want to talk about red lyrium now, because I want to make yet another video on it. So aside from Titans, there are dragons. In the War Table operation, Learn More About Dragons, we learned that they defend against the Blight by forming cysts around the affected area. Now this brings up an interesting idea. Remember the primeval tag? I've always found it weird that no one had ever seen red lyrium anywhere else before that. If we consider that dragons form cysts around the Blight to stop it from spreading, what if Titans do something similar? Red lyrium is infected with the Blight, so what if the primeval tag was similar to a cyst, maybe even done unconsciously in the Titan's sleep? As in, the Blight infected that area of the Titan's blood, and so it shifted stone to stop it from spreading further. I'm not even sure if I believe that, but I think it's a cool idea. Now, I think I really got off track here, and this video is getting really long, so I'm going to start wrapping this up. In short, blood magic has been used to slow the progression of the taint and drive it away from objects entirely. Blight magic cannot truly be used responsibly. Darkspawn avoid Titans when they can, and dragons are more resistant to the Blight than other creatures. Blight magic may be drawn directly from the void, or it could be the blight being manifested within our world. Or maybe some combination. Maybe the blight is used to get the adequate amount of power to pull the void through. Now, if having a child with the blood of a great dragon really did cure Fiona, and Darkspawn deliberately avoid the Titans, and powerful magic can be used to draw the taint out or away from something, maybe all these things together hold the secret to effectively curing the blight altogether. This is certainly not the last video I will make that covers the blight, since it seems to keep popping up like that friend that nobody likes. So I'd say that's it for now, guys. Thank you so much for watching, and remember, Tala Nadas.